Good evening. I'd like to call to order the council meeting of Monday, November 20th, 2023 to order. Can everyone stand for the playing of the national anthem?
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Quand on brasse et porte le pays, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none, before we get to approval of the agenda, Bonnie, you have some information.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Before we approve the agenda, item 14.1 under your resolutions this evening has been removed. It was an administrative error. Councillor Davoli will be back on December 4th, so we removed it until she returns. Councillor Korstanji has submitted a notice of motion on the investigation of a short-term rental tax licensing system and allocation of revenue for tenant legal representation, a pilot project. We've received a request for a delegation from Annette Gibbons. After the agenda was published, we would like to add her as a delegate at this evening's meeting. I also have a motion to accept a late delegation for council to vote on. The delegate is Mr. Mike Marcolongo, representing Keep the Greenbelt Promise. So we'll need to vote on whether or not, according to our rules, whether or not he can present this evening.
All right, thank you, Bonnie. So can I have a mover and seconder to permit Mr. Marco Longo to delegate? Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that council permit Marco Longo to delegate on the Greenbelt report. All in favor? I guess we have to do e-scribe or not. That's carried. Sorry, can I get a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the November 20th, 2023 council meeting agenda be approved as amended. So we do have some delegations tonight. First we have, oh, sorry, is that carried? All in favor, sorry, that's carried. Thank you. Getting ahead of myself. First we have Annette Gibbons, speaking on report PA 23-35, Greenbelt Amendment. Annette, welcome to the podium.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Jordan, councillors, town staff, and citizens of Grimsby. My name is Annette Gibbons. I live at 9 Lawrence Avenue, and I'm a lifetime resident of Grimsby. Today, here, I'm representing the Grimsby Environmental Network. I ask that council not support recommendation 2, 4, and 5 of the staff report on Greenbelt amendments. Please do not support asking the province to keep the Winston Road and Klein Road properties out of the Greenbelt, and do not support asking the province to create a way to swap out Greenbelt land for other land not currently in the Greenbelt. Citizens from around the province, including those here in Grimsby, have made their view that they want the Greenbelt protected very clear. Scathing reports from the Auditor General and the Integrity Commissioner have pointed to behind closed doors corrupt scheme that made preferential treatment to certain developers and that ignored all regular planning procedures. As well, the entire process of the Greenbelt land removals is under RCMP investigation as we speak. Surely, this council cannot support the corrupt Greenbelt land removal process by endorsing its results for this community. This council stated its commitment to its citizens through the leadership values and principles of achieving and maintaining public trust. The foundation for a legitimate and engaging civic democracy, and through the council vision statement, an innovative, vibrant community where people and the environment matter. Council's #1 priority is people, to ensure all Grimsby residents have meaningful opportunities to engage in their municipality and community, and increase opportunities for public consultation, feedback, and engagement. This is noted in all of the town's documentation and featured on the town's website. I ask you today, have you kept this promise in regards to this matter? I understand the province has only given you until November 30th to provide comments on Bill 136, so there is no time for lengthy public engagement. But I ask you now, tonight, to carefully think through the implications of your decision, not only on our community, but what it could mean across the province. As Canadians, it's our duty to uphold the democratic process and make decisions for the collective good. We are all connected. The decisions this council makes today will affect every living being for future generations to come. If the province agrees to this request, it could set a precedent for other Greenbelt land removals. Once our Greenbelt land is gone, it's gone forever. Citizens from all over this province came together for the greater good with a loud and clear message of hands off the Greenbelt. The province has now reversed its decision. However, all eyes are now on Grimsby to see how it proceeds with this recommendation to leave these two properties out of the Greenbelt. Are you going to bow to the effects of a corrupt process and allow immoral development to continue, or stand together with the rest of the province and say, no, enough is enough? It has been mentioned that Grimsby's situation is unique. We are all unique. Each person, municipality, region, and province in this beautiful country we call our home. We need to protect our unique and precious environment, another priority of this council. Our soil and climate are unique. So unique, these properties have been awarded the highest priority of protection, that of specialty cropland in the Greenbelt. Provincial policy gives specialty crop areas the highest priority for protection because they are scarce and unique if lost. If lost, they cannot be recreated, are important economically, represent some of Ontario's highest earning agricultural lands, and provide many value-added and agritourism opportunities. Please, I ask you, do not support recommendation 2, 4, and 5 of the staff report coming to you tonight on Greenbelt amendments. The public wants the Greenbelt protected, period. We hope you, as our locally elected officials, understand that and convey that to the provincial government. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this very important matter, and hope you seriously consider all of the concerns I made when you vote on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Up next, we have Mike Marcolongo, again speaking on report PA 23-36. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you for the ability to speak tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. It's hard to get here, but once you're here, you get 10 minutes. That's quite generous. My name is Mike Marcolongo. I'm with a group called Small Change Fund, and I work on the Greenbelt Promise campaign. The Greenbelt Promise campaign is a grassroots network of organizations that are working to protect the Greenbelt. And we started mobilizing in December of last year, when just after the Greenbelt carve-outs were announced. So I read with interest the staff report, and I was struck by the approach. I think it's quite one-sided in terms of the perspective, and I'll speak to that in a minute. Just to begin, there is no mention of any of the value of the Greenbelt or of the value of the specialty crop area in this area. So I just want to go back to what is the Greenbelt. And the Greenbelt was established decades ago, and it was by forward-thinking community organizations, political parties of all stripes that recognize unrestricted urban growth is untenable. And that is that we cannot keep paving over farmland that feeds us, the natural areas that provide us with clean water and clean air that mitigate climate change. So essentially, the Greenbelt is created as a safeguard which requires us to address problems like the housing crisis without destroying nature. Now, as I read the staff report, I get it in terms of I believe it's 140 hectares, roughly over 300 acres, that previous councils have asked for its removal. And it is especially crop area. As Annette was saying, the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs has highlighted special protection for specialty crop area. Again, that wasn't found in the report. On its website, OMAFRA will tell you it's rare, cannot be replaced, and is under protection. Again, planning reports should look at both sides of the equation. So, I know this council voted on this matter a year ago, and I watched that council meeting, and I would suggest the climate there was very different. The Greenbelt carve-outs had just been announced, but what we didn't know is that there was no due process related to those carve-outs. We now know that the government did not follow due process, that there was insider trading, and that there's likely corruption. We also now know that the RCMP is investigating. So my question to you, Council, tonight is, Doug Ford and his ministers and his government is paying a significant price for the Greenbelt scandal. And so why would you hitch your wagon to that scandal? It's not the right approach. It's not the right process. And I would encourage you to think about your political price if you vote for some of these recommendations. So I would encourage you to go with the third recommendation and the first. The third being, get the reimbursement for the town of Grimsby, similar to the town of Pickering, to cover those administrative costs. But it would be rather foolish to hitch your wagon to a government that's being investigated for a process that doesn't work for Ontarians, probably doesn't work for your community either. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Michael. Can I get a mover and seconder to receive the delegations? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradzi. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradzi. Resolved that the delegations from Annette Gibbons and Mike Marcolongo be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to Chair's report. Planning and Development Committee. The Planning and Development Committee mainly consisted of, on November 8th, 2023, was the non-statutory public meeting for the Wolverton development, 13, 19, and 21, or 13 Mountain, 19, and 21 Elm. And it was an interesting meeting. We had several delegations, and Planning and Development voted in favor of the, or did we vote? We didn't really vote. No. It was just a public meeting. We received the Wolverton and looking forward to working with the developer to put forward the first rental development in Grimsby in the last 30 years. And it's something that, certainly in my opinion, it is sorely needed. And I think it will be a benefit for all the community. And that was pretty well the main focus of our planning meeting, and that's it. So now we'll move to the adoption of the previous minutes. Can I get a mover and seconder to approve the previous minutes?
Can you get a mover and seconder first?
For which? Yeah, mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Vardy, seconded by Councillor Bradzi. Councillor Sharwa, you want to lift something?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to lift 8.3 Planning and Development Committee, November 8th, and 8.4 Special Council, November 13th. It was an item procedural. I just want to get clarification on it. Yeah, Planning and Development Committee 8.3. It was a procedural question.
Councillor Sharwa has lifted Resolution 8.3 of the Planning and Development Committee. We need a seconder. Councillor DeFlavio. Moved by Councillor Shawa, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that 8.3 from the Planning and Development Committee minutes of November 8th be lifted for separate consideration. Councillor Shawa?
Through you, Mayor.
Oh, yeah. All in favor to lift it? That's carried.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. Just on the first item for the Planning and Development Committee, just watched bits of it, noticed there weren't any questions asked of the developer regarding the Wolverton. And Councillor DeFlavio was in attendance, and he wasn't actually...
Procedurally, councillors for a non-statutory public meeting aren't answering questions other than for clarification.
Okay, so I'm going to read the section here that I have, the procedural bylaw. 15.13, members of council are not permitted to debate or provide any personal opinion on the application being considered. They're only to ask questions of clarification. And upon watching the video, I could see that Councillor DeFlavio right away said he wasn't looking on stating an opinion. He just wanted to ask questions, and you'd shut him down. I'm hoping I can get clarification as to why, when clearly that's not procedurally correct.
Councillor DeFlavio would have had to come up to the podium and say that he had a question for clarification. He didn't do that, so.
I don't believe that that was offered as an actual thing that he could do. Yes, so if you could maybe state whether or not you were in the wrong so that we know how this works.
Well, I'm not going
in
to
the
state
future.
anything right now. And I don't really like being blindsided by a councillor again and again and again. So we'll leave it at that. Any further questions or comments, Councillor Shawa?
I'll wait for the next one, thanks.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thanks, Your Worship. Sorry, I was surprised. I wasn't expecting to have this discussion tonight, but I did want to clarify that I only wanted to ask questions at that meeting. I made it clear that I didn't want to debate. There were questions that I had. I later forwarded those questions to staff, but I thought that they were important questions. Because it was a public meeting, I wanted to ask them that night. If it's up to the chair to determine whether that's appropriate or not, and I have to accept your decision. I do want to make it clear that I knew the procedure. I didn't want to debate. I just wanted to ask questions. So I think that what Councillor Charwa is asking is, in the future, if people have questions at a meeting, to make sure that we're all doing it right, because I chair meetings, other people chair meetings. If there are councillors in attendance there, should we be allowing them to ask questions and cut them off if it gets to the debate section, or just not allow the questions in the first place? Just so that anybody who's chairing is making the right decision in the future. That's all. Maybe our clerk can answer that question. So I don't want to put you on the spot. I think it's just important for everybody to be clear on that.
And I appreciate that, Councillor DeFlavio, and I'm glad you took it to planning staff, just given the fact that had the potential to be going to the OLT. I'm just erring on the side of caution, so councillors don't overstep something that could cause a decision to be made through what council says at a planning meeting or any other meeting that has the potential to go to the OLT. So when something is going to the OLT or has the potential to go to the OLT, I tend to tread very carefully, because anything we say can and certainly will be used against us. So
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, if you send those questions in early, if you have questions, but of course they probably came up during the discussion, right? It's always best for the chair to get them in advance and know that you want to speak. But I know it is in the procedure, and you are allowed for sure. But if the chair allows it, so to speak. So thank you.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So in this case, there was no information provided in advance, so I couldn't. Again, absolutely, I agree. If I had the questions in advance, I would have sent them in. My questions came up as a result of the the presentation that night, and that's why I wanted to ask him. Sometimes we have the same questions that members of the public have, but people don't feel comfortable asking them. There are lots of things like that, and so, again, it was a public meeting, even though it was non-statutory, it was a public meeting. So in a public meeting, it's either public or it's not, and then, I guess there are questions about why would we have a public meeting about something that's going to that has the potential to go to the OLT. There's lots of other questions that go with that. But in this particular case, I just wanted to ask some questions related to the development, that's all.
Just, excuse me, through you, Mr. Mayor, just one other thing point of clarification. The other thing is, when we're having standing committees, those are committees, there is a few councillors in the room, and the caution is always quorum. When you meet that quorum threshold and whether or not we have too many in the room, and I don't know how many were in the room. I wasn't at that meeting, obviously, so I didn't know, but I know that sometimes if that looks like we have a quorum of council and business is being moved forward, that can be, we did? Oh, okay, didn't know, thanks.
All right. All right. Yeah, so that one was carried, so. All right, so the next lifted item, moved by Councillor Oshawa, second by Councillor DeFlavio, resolved that Resolution 8.4 from the Special Council Committee Minutes of November 14th be lifted for separate consideration. We need 2/3 for this. All right, so if it's a clarification, then I don't think we need 2/3. All right, so all in favor? That's good.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, I just wanted clarification on the conflict of interest. It says in procedural bylaw 2074 for code of conduct conflicts of interest, members shall avoid conflicts of interest, both pecuniary and non-pecuniary. Members shall take proactive steps to mitigate conflicts of interest in order to maintain public confidence in the town and its elected officials. Members are encouraged to seek guidance from the Integrity Commissioner when they become aware that they may have a conflict between their responsibilities to the public as a member and any other interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary. So this is directed to the mayor. I'm just wondering if you consulted with the Integrity Commissioner, given your donation from the party that we voted on.
You can't do this because this is something that you're welcome to file an IC complaint against me, and I welcome it because I will fight it because I did nothing wrong. And again, you're attacking me. It has nothing to do with the meeting, and I can declare a conflict of interest, and I obviously will if I feel I have one, but just...
In our procedural bylaw, it just asks that you speak with the Integrity Commissioner and that you get clarification on that. I'm wondering if you...
Well, I don't think I need one, but thanks, Bonnie.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just very, very briefly, no one can declare a conflict of interest for anyone else. It's entirely up to the individual to declare their own.
Any further comments on that? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolved that the following minutes be approved. Council, November 6th, 2023, Special Council, November 7th, 2023, Planning and Development Committee, November 8th, 2023, Special Council, November 13th, 2023. All in favor? That's carried. Are there any announcements this evening? Councillor Bradsey.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I just wanted to congratulate everybody involved with putting on a great Remembrance Day ceremony down at the Cenotaph. I also want to congratulate, or say we had a delegation down at the Legion from Minister Logan Kanapathy from the province discussing the Soldiers Act and the provincial aid for veterans. It was incredible to have him shine some light on that, and we are certainly passing along to all veterans in the area. And yeah.
Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through Chair. I'd like to congratulate our West Niagara Special Olympics basketball team who qualified to go to the Special Olympics Ontario Provincial Games, first time ever. And we also have 2 athletes who have qualified to go for bowling. So congratulations to our athletes.
Well, that's great news. Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to brief council on the Grimsby Green Advisory Community Roundtable that we had Friday, the 10th of November. It was a great meeting. It was part of our, we're divided into 3 groups, so this is part of our outreach. Groups in attendance included, I'll tell you in a second here. Town of Grimsby, our CAO came, our community services person came. There was someone there from the public library who was great because he talked about the seed exchange that the library has. We had members from the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, the Grimsby Lions Club, Grimsby Rotary Club, Grimsby Beach Community, Grimsby Garden Club, West Niagara Secondary School, which has an amazing green industries program, and all the groups around the table were looking like, how are we going to grab all these students? And also the Grimsby Historical Society, and we had a representative from Mrs. Greenway, so from a kind of retail perspective. The purpose of this was just to, start engaging some of the community groups to see what they had to say, what they thought some of the green priorities are, as well as to introduce, some of the groups to each other so that we might be able to find partnerships and opportunities for collaboration. Bob Friesen, who's here in the audience today, he was an excellent chair of the meeting. And so it went on from 6 to 8 p.m. Friday the 10th. Much appreciated by all in attendance, and it helps us to, as the Green Committee is formulating its priorities for what we want to try and accomplish and how we feed those priorities into the budget process. So this was great to start our engagement process with some of the community groups, not all. There were many others invited that but weren't able to attend, but as I say, this is kind of an ongoing process that of talking to people and learning more about what kind of opportunities are out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy, and thank you very much for attending on my behalf. I was unable to attend, unfortunately. And I just wanted to say that I had the honor of attending the Remembrance Day ceremonies at the Cenotaph at the museum on Saturday, November 11th, and it was just really nice to see everyone there and to see the turnout. And I went to the Legion luncheon after the ceremony and talked to some people that have been to other ceremonies, one in Burlington, another in Oakville, and they said that they couldn't believe the turnout in Grimsby, that we give to remember Remembrance Day and remember the sacrifices that that all Canadians have had made during all the wars and conflicts that we've been in, and it was just very moving. And when the Lancaster flew across right at the end of the ceremony, it was very touching, as was the poppy banner that was done by Trinity. It was just quite a sight to see, and it's just so important that we continue to remember this, especially given the fact that there is so much strife in the world today in 2023, and there is potential for conflict. And I just say we need more kindness in this world, and I'll leave it at that. Any more announcements? Seeing none. We move to consent reports. Need a mover and seconder for BYL 2305. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that Council hereby approves the following item, and the consent item be approved and the recommendation contained therein. BYL 23-05, that report BYL 23-05, information report on access to adjoining property bylaw dated November 20th, 23, be received for information. All in favor? That's carried. Now we move to discussion reports. Can I have a mover and seconder to get report PA 23-36, Greenbelt amendments and motions on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradsey.
I'm going to request an e-scribe vote, and I'm telling you in advance. And if we could split the things up as well, I'd appreciate that.
All right. Harold, do you have a staff presentation? Thank you.
Members? Okay, thank you. With practice, I'll get better at this. I'm here to present an overview of the report before council today, with the intent of highlighting key sections and clarifying how it came about, its background, and its key directives. Following the presentation, there'll be obviously an opportunity for questions, and I will do my best to answer them, and I may call on my colleagues, of course, to assist where they might be far more adept at answering any specific technical responses. You might find the presentation a little bit repetitive, but it's intentionally so. There are some points that are worth repeating, and to make sure that it's understood, and you'll know where that is and which parts that is. I did read the article this morning that was misinformed and not entirely correct, and I'm hoping also that this presentation will help to clarify some of the points that were worth contending in that article. So, next slide, please. Just to give you a bit of an outline of the way this presentation is going to unfold, there's 6 sections. Just give you a bit of a reasoning, kind of rationale, a timeline, and brief history leading up to where we are today. Recommendations in the report, the requests being made of the province, and then we'll end with any questions. Next slide, please. With respect to the reasoning for the report, I just want to start off by just providing a bit of a rationale, and I think this is very important to lay out. First is that the province has proposed an amendment to the Greenbelt Act and is consulting on it through the Environmental Registry of Ontario, or the ERO, which I'll use as throughout the presentation. It's providing a 45-day commenting period ending on November 30th. It was actually released on October 16th, which was also the date of the council meeting that for which these motions came about. Council passed 2 motions approved on October 16th that had to be considered within this report. In Appendix E and Appendix F, first dealing with remuneration and the second dealing with greenbelt exclusions. The town is also looking for remuneration for following the provincial process that was eventually revealed to be flawed, as we all know, and that led to its recent reversal in the order of $82,000. The town has also a long-standing request with the province to be able to consider lands currently within the Greenbelt in recognition of existing developments, its fragmentation, and the need to accommodate additional growth over the long term, residential, commercial, industrial, and other community uses. The town is also seeking that the province define a new process for considering Greenbelt lands that is full, open, and accountable, enabling municipalities to satisfy provincial policy requirements, including via amendments where necessary and appropriate, and in pursuit of achieving complete communities. This includes a public consultation, further study on issues such as agriculture and environment, the need for the lands to accommodate additional growth, et cetera, et cetera. Just as a demonstration of this last point, had the province, in fact, been more mindful in in undertaking a correct process, it would have understood that the focus of development of these lands here in Grimsby ought to have served to better balance the town's tax base, for example. As we all know, there is a greater need for employment uses to counter the misbalance of residential uses. And in fact, that wasn't the case, as we all know. This has been primarily a residential-driven project. And a process that was informed and thorough would have determined perhaps a different outcome. Next slide, please. In terms of a timeline, it'd be interesting to understand that, the Greenbelt and the initiatives associated with the Greenbelt with the town and the province, in fact, have unfolded over almost 2 decades. Not just the recent initiatives of the province to unravel the Greenbelt. Starting in the early 2000s, the town was preparing for the last review of the official plan. The town was also receiving a number of requests at the time for urban expansion, particularly in the West End. As a result, the town conducted a growth management study that determined additional lands would be required to accommodate additional development over the long term. At a similar time, the province was introducing the Greenbelt plan, which was happening concurrently. The town provided comments at the time regarding the work that was being undertaken with respect to the potential necessity for expansion of the urban area. The Greenbelt was passed in early 2005 and in fact backdated to 2004. Although the processes were happening concurrently, it might appear that the Greenbelt lands, the Greenbelt Act had in fact preceded the town's studies, but that wasn't in fact true. Every 10 years, the province reviews the Greenbelt plan, and in 2016 and 2017, the province reviewed the Greenbelt plan as part of a coordinated review of a number of other growth-related plans, the Niagara Escarpment Plan, as well as the Oak Ridges Moraine and growth plan itself. The town once again requested at the time that the Greenbelt lands north of the Niagara Escarpment be considered for potential consideration as part of its potential growth. As part of the request of the town at the time, the former mayor offered a potential swap of lands in the south of the municipality to allow for further consideration of those lands to the north. And I will illustrate where that is in a map to follow. Needless to say, the province included those lands that were brought forward by the former mayor, but did not engage in a swap. So the Greenbelt grew by a significant amount at the time, and thanks to the efforts of Grimsby, but the province did not at the time reconsider those lands north of the escarpment. In late 2022, the province initiated a process for municipal consideration of lands in the Greenbelt that would have allowed for exclusion and inclusion, and this brings us to where we are today. They also outlined a specific area within the Greenbelt for the Greenbelt removal, guided by a process that involved a provincial facilitator's office. The town worked with this facilitator to consider the potential development of these lands. And as we all know, on October 16th, due to a number of different reasons, and for which we all know too well, the province proposed a reversal of those removals and offered a 45-day commenting period, which brings us to where we are today. Council on October 16th passed two motions, one requesting remuneration and the other a continuation with the exclusions. The report considered these motions. This report provided to council considers these motions and provides comments to the province as part of their public participation on the proposed changes. It is also anticipated that in 2014 and 2015 that the province will once again review the Greenbelt. So that brings us, outlines a bit of a timeline and provides an overview that I felt was very relevant and helps to provide some context as to where we are today. This next slide will illustrate the lands discussed in the report, just to clarify, which also might be interesting to note. What you see in the orange are the urban area, the current urban area of Grimsby, and outlined in blue are the lands that the town has had a long-standing request for reconsideration with the province since the outset of the Greenbelt. And outlined in black, the smaller parcels within that are in fact the lands that the province has recently considered for removal and have recently reversed, and which are the subject of the council's motions today. So that gives you a clarity as to where the lands that we're talking about. Just to pull that out, if you look at the next slide, I'll just refer to the swap I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. Those outlined in blue, this is pulling back and seeing the town in its entirety. You'll see outlined in blue are those lands that have long been the long-standing lands that that the town has asked for reconsideration, and the land offered for swap back in 2016, 2017 by the former mayor, which the province did in fact consider and add to the Greenbelt in the end. So that gives you, as you can see, there's considerably larger than the lands that are being proposed for reconsideration. Next slide, please. So these are the recommendations in the report. Without reading them at verbatim, I just wanted to clarify as to how staff has dealt with them. Recommendation 2, obviously the first is about receiving the report, but the recommendation 2 proposes a response from the town to the province on the ERO as part of the request for public comments. So the province's request for public comments is what the recommendation 2 deals with. Recommendations 3 and 4 consider council's motions that were specifically set on October 16th, the remuneration and the retention of the lands. And recommendation 5 reflects the town's long-standing request for the province to consider an opportunity for the municipality to properly plan for a complete community. Next slide, please. Just to provide further explanation of the requests of the province, and specifically how those are dealt with. As per council's approved motion, the first request is simply for the province to remunerate the town for the time and effort spent on following the process up until this recent reversal. So that's the first. As per council's second approved motion, stating that the two properties were slated to bring the town benefits and that the staff investigate the possibility of moving forward with these applications, the second point is a roadmap to respond to that motion. staff's recommendations on how to best address and meet that motion. This would require that the lands that were removed be maintained and that a process be developed by the province for their consideration that would involve public consultation on their long-term use. The third is reflective of the necessity to access additional lands to enable the town to properly plan for a complete community. And the last slide sets out our recommendation in contrast to the flawed provincial process which led us here, a process that is a part of Recommendation 5, which I'd like to elaborate on. And I'd just like to read it for what it says. In contrast to the provincial process for the removal, staff are requesting a process that is full, open, and accountable. The process should, at minimum, include meaningful public consultation, additional study for advancing a true, complete community, including residential, commercial, industrial, and community use needs. Further study on the Greenbelt related to issues such as agriculture and the environment, and implementing in accordance, and that the implementation of this occur in accordance with the standard planning practices, such as official plan amendments, zoning amendments, and guidelines, among other things. And so that brings the presentation to conclusion. I'm hoping that that helps to clarify any misunderstandings or any questions that you might have, but we're going to open up the floor for any further questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Harold. Questions from council? Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Harold, I just wanted to ask in relation to the GO train, is it within 800 meters as the crow flies around the GO train that gets removed under transit area? Am I correct on that?
So the GO train, the radii, the 800-meter radii does encompass some of these lands. Is that the question? Yes, it does.
Yeah, I was going to follow that into, does 502 Winston incorporate under that radii?
Oh, just within the distance, yes.
Under that process, what opportunity for community benefits would we have? Would there be on the table? Is it even known?
Sorry, under the process that we're recommending?
Under the GO train removal process.
So we're asking of the province that they outline a process that for moving forward for the removal of for what would merit removal of the lands, and how those reconsideration of those lands would take place, in terms of land uses. So the process has not been determined. The province has clearly and without question, very publicly admitted that it has not undergone through a process that was open and transparent. And so, but they haven't defined a process that in fact ought to have been taken. So that's something that we were requesting of them.
I think it's absolutely a great idea for the municipality to be able to confront this and make the request instead of having it being forced upon us. For example, too, like if we make the province aware that we need an amendment in and around the GO train, and for that to happen, I think the municipalities are the closest to the ground and boots on the ground of the issues here, and I think a process which has us initiate it would best suit everybody around it than having it struck down from Queen's Park. I just also want to say thank you for the report. I think it was very well.
Any further questions? Councillor Howe.
Through you, Chair, just for clarification, Harold, this report really came from a question that we asked as a council and not one that was initiated or was given birth by staff. It was a question from council. So kind of just to clear that up just a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Vardy.
Through you, Mayor, yes, that's correct. It was us responding and trying to make sense of motions by council and trying to find where we can a roadmap to achieve what, if achievable, was the objective. So it was entirely brought on to staff, and we did our best to respond to it.
So if I may, Harold, there has been some rhetoric directed towards staff that suggested that they were responsible for everything. And to staff, I apologize. You were doing your job. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy, then Councillor DeFlavio, then Councillor Sher.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few questions. If we were to support this report as is, would anything in that force us to give up the Greenbelt lands? All we're saying is if the province wants Greenbelt land, they need to have an open and transparent process. Is that correct?
So once again, the town has always consistently made requests of the province for consideration of these lands. Just to be clear, this is not a new position of the town. Yeah.
However, okay, what the town didn't do, and perhaps Councillor DeFlavio, because this happened during his tenure, he might be able to give us some more information. But what the town didn't do initially, when they were talking to the province and said, we want to make this swap, and they gave us a swap without taking those lands, they didn't consult. So there was no consultation. And in our current environment, consultation is key. And I kind of came in here ready to reject this and to say we need to look at this within the context of the next official plan and where we're going writ large. Because maybe it's not Greenbelt that we need at all. But maybe it is. I mean, if we want the GO train, I don't know, like we might be forced to make some hard decisions. But I think for the purpose of this, we should, if we're asking the province to say, if you want Greenbelt lands, you have to have an open and transparent process that includes public consultation, then I can support this. As long as we're not saying, province, we want to negotiate our Greenbelt lands with you, because that I don't support. So I want to be very clear, and I want you to be very clear that there's a difference in that.
That's a very good point, and I think that there is nobody on staff that has any preconceived notions of what these lands ought to be or should be, or whether they should be developed. That's not for us to say. All we are requesting is that they be available where warranted and where appropriate for consideration as part of the overall comprehensive review and planning of the town. And if this town is to accommodate additional growth, all of these things need to be part of the consideration. That doesn't mean that we at this point have arrived at any conclusion about this. We haven't gone to consultation about it yet. There's a lot of big questions that still need to be they still need to be answered. And so how we're responding to the motion, the council's motion, is that the best strategy forward would be to ask the province to set out a process by which to consider and assess these lands. And at the end of the day, it's up to them to decide whether that.
Not just our Greenbelt lands, but all Greenbelt lands.
Well, I would suspect that what would apply to Grimsby would have to be applicable to other municipalities. And it might be that what sets apart Grimsby from other municipalities is that these lands are quite unique and distinct relative to other lands. And it might be that that is why it's set apart. But the process would have to be universally applied, and the criteria would need to be the same.
Now, given that they're tender fruit, is there any tender fruit being grown on any of these lands right now?
I'm aware of. I'm just going to refer to staff here. Yeah, Terry?
As one of the appendices to the report, there is an excerpt from an agricultural study that was done in 2017, where it was an agricultural impact assessment, and it looked at all the specialty crop in those two areas, and it said that they might not be able to, you can redesignate them away from specialty crop just because they're not farmed that way. Just the land base isn't quite there. Some of the soil isn't there. Some of the supporting components of agriculture are not there. So the designation itself might be incorrect in that area. It's not to say we don't have a lot of specialty crop in Grimsby. The rest of Grimsby is largely greenbelt and specialty crop. It's just that area, they did do an agricultural study to determine it, and they said it can be potentially redesignated.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to just start quickly by addressing Councillor Vardy's thoughts about the process that occurred in the past. So I'm going to sound like Grandpa Simpson here, but I've been around for a while. And in 2004, Mr. Basic was there too, and Mayor Jordan was on council as well. We underwent a comprehensive study, a growth management study, because we wanted to do the right thing. And before expanding the urban boundary, we wanted to make sure that we went through a process, a public process, where we looked at all the land in Grimsby, where the urban boundary should go. While we were in the process of completing that study, the province passed the Greenbelt Act. That study showed that the urban boundary should expand west of Casablanca, primarily the land that we're talking about today. Now, there's good farmland west of Casablanca, really good farmland that should never come out of the Greenbelt, in my opinion. But that comprehensive study that was completed in 2004 would have been approved by council, but the Greenbelt Act that was passed in 2005 was retroactive. So they made it so that you couldn't, even though you had a process in place, you could not pass any expansion or boundary expansions, because they didn't want, in defense of the province at that time, they didn't want a bunch of municipalities around the province expanding their boundaries. Now, we had already started the process. We were well into that process, almost completed that process before that Greenbelt Act was passed, but there was nothing we could do about it. And we knew that, and we said, okay, we're going to wait the 10 years. They said, wait 10 years. We waited the 10 years, and in preparation for 2015, when the review was supposed to happen, we prepared. We again went through a comprehensive process where we looked at the land use, the type of land it was, the soil. We looked at the viability of that land as farmland, because I agree with people who say that any land can be farmland, but when you look at a parcel of land and the size of a parcel of land, you have to determine whether it's viable as farmland, whether the size of that land makes it viable as farmland, what kind of crop you can grow there, because if it's a cash crop like corn or soy, not really a good use of land that is immediately adjacent to urban boundary. So all of that was part of our 2015 review that we put forward. And again, the province, saying they were going to listen, didn't listen. Now, I'm a supporter of the Greenbelt. I think that there were a lot of mistakes made in the process, and lots of parcels of land, almost all of the parcels of land that were taken out should not have been taken out of the Greenbelt. But these parcels of land in Grimsby, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of all of the things that we've done in the past in Grimsby, don't meet the criteria for Greenbelt land. They're not tender fruit land. They're not sensitive areas like a moraine or anything like that. They are vacant land One of those parcels of land that we're talking about next to the lake is a big fenced-off former church property. To put things in context for you, the tower lands where the Rogers Tower are on the lake were designated as tender fruit land in 2005. That's a complete misunderstanding and not even looking at the truth of the matter. That is not tender fruit land. That has not in my lifetime been tender fruit land. So anyway, I just wanted to provide a bit of background because there are a lot of misconceptions about what's happening. And I think that it's very important that any decision that we make and any recommendation we make should be a Grimsby solution, not looking at what's happening in the province, because there were lots of mistakes made in the province. And I don't want to ask them to look at all of the province. I want to ask that we look at Grimsby, because I don't want to open up the Greenbelt, and I don't want to provide the opportunity for opening up the Greenbelt around the province. But I think that these parcels of land are parcels of land that should never have been in the Greenbelt in the first place, and we have lots of evidence to support that over the years. Anyway, I'm sorry for the rant. You asked a question, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to do that. I do have a question, though, for Harold. Harold, at the beginning of this process, and part of the justification of this process was the idea of affordability of housing. And never during this process, and not in your report, and in your defense, you did what we asked you to do, but at no point do we talk about affordability of housing. And I think that anything that we put forward as a council needs to address the affordability of housing. And so whether that be, because one of the original proposals, what we were told early on was 10% of this land would be affordable housing. Now, that would be defined, of course, there's lots of things that used to define affordable housing, you know, the market. I'm fine with whatever criteria they come up with. I'll get to the point. Can we include a stipulation that 10% of this land, of whatever land that is developed, be either affordable housing or rental housing, so that way we can truly begin to address some of the problems that are occurring throughout the province? Because if you just take land out of the Greenbelt, frankly, it just becomes more expensive housing. But if we put some sort of stipulation, and we're rarely in a position of strength, and at this time, we're in a position of strength. We're in a position to negotiate for something that we know is right. So I have no problem with removal of this land from the Greenbelt, but I think that if we do remove it, we do need to put something in there, whether it's 10% be rental and affordable housing as defined by the province, or something like that, to make sure that going forward, any land that's removed from the Greenbelt be removed with the true purpose of trying to make housing a realistic goal for everybody, not just upper middle class and wealthy people. So that, anyway, can we do that? Or would you be comfortable with us adding that, or do I have to, you know, I'll let you speak, sorry.
You're bringing up some very good points. Often the best opportunities for us to aspire to a higher level of good community design that would be more inclusive, that would have better sustainability measures, that would have better design. The best way in which those things can be achieved is where there is some leverage. And the leverage exists here. The leverage is that these lands are now not developable. And if they are to be released for development, there's an opportunity for the province to come forward with a higher expectation of how these lands would be, the privilege of developing these lands ought to come with some conditions. And those conditions ought to be that there needs to provide some form of affordability. It needs to meet some climate change criteria. There needs to be some higher expectation around active transportation, especially around the transit, around the future GO station, that this needs to be a truly transit supportive community. And it's the devil's in the details, and there needs to be some very strong criteria and conditions set out at the outset. So in my opinion, I would hope that these lands, if there was a privilege of actually reconsidering them from Greenbelt, that they need to be something other than just another suburban development. They need to be something special. That's my opinion, and the leverage is there to do so, and I think the province has the opportunity, with all eyes on it, to get that pendulum swinging in the other direction, where they can actually come around and demonstrate enlightenment, as opposed to where they were a couple months ago. Anybody?
Councillor Sharwell.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. First, I wanted to thank you for answering Councillor Howe's question as far as clarity. It was not staff that directed this. It was Councillor Bradze's motion to have this come forward. So we wouldn't even be here if Councillor Bradze didn't bring that forward and 8 council members didn't support it, not me. Just want to clarify that. So thank you for that. And I'm sorry if you have gotten heat for it, because you're here because we told you, well, not me, but others told you to be here and doing this. However, okay, a few things. Obviously, we spoke in detail before about the importance of having Indigenous leaders come and provide their voice. We said it was important. We do the land acknowledgement. Have we, as the town of Grimsby, done that? Have we consulted with any Indigenous leaders, and if so, who?
With respect to this report?
With any of the, discussing the possibility of greenbelt removal, yes. And this report.
No, I mean, we at this point are just outlining not a plan or a study, but rather a means to get to that. So in our expectation is that as part of the process that we would oblige the province to provide, that among other things, when they talk about consultation, we'd be happy to sit down and provide the province some, hand-holding in terms of what we think ought to happen in consultation, in terms of consultation. But as we set out in that last slide, we have some, staff has some specific conditions as a minimum that we think a process ought to include, which would be meaningful consultation. And when we say meaningful public consultation, it's not just simply consultation for the sake of consultation. It means it has to be inclusive. It has to reach out to as many and as diverse a population as possible that's representative of the population, and it has to really result in some true fingerprints on the plan, and that would include Indigenous leaders, of course. I mean, that's from our perspective, but again, it's not us, it's the province that is going to be setting out this process, if at all. Remember, we don't know for certain that they're even going to do this. It would be just a request of them.
Okay, I still have some more questions. So we haven't done that, so that's something that needs to be done. And this is all about money. So, this was purchased at a fraction of the price because it's, with the premise that you're not going to develop, and, here they are, hit the gold mine, the jackpot. Now all of a sudden we're going to allow them to develop. So for clarification, do we, if we're talking about growth targets, has there been an identified amount of developable land already within the urban boundary? Is this greenbelt land essential for meeting those growth targets?
Very good question, and I'll probably invite Terry to respond to this as well, but I'll just kick it off by saying that that we are not there yet. This official plan review process currently underway. One of the key components of that underlying study to set direction is going to be determining that. It would be helpful in this process for us to know whether at play are these lands or not, if at all, because it will determine the kind of scenarios and modeling that we will do in terms of accommodating growth. It will mean that we will probably have to consider more denser locations and higher densities. We will have to grow more internally. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just suggesting that when you have a limited supply of land, it usually means going up. Terry?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we have the growth plan that allocates the allocations that the province gave to the regions gave to us, and that's what we have to meet. The province more recently has revised the intent for the provincial, what they called the policy statement. It's going to go to the provincial planning statement. And what that is going to do is try to combine the growth plan and the former PPS. And in that, they talk about each municipality has to do their own growth numbers. So we're looking forward. If the province is setting out these requirements for us to meet, we're going to have to look at it in a different way than we have thus far. So right now, we will meet the current requirement for the growth plan that the region set out for us, but should that change happen for provincial policy, we're going to have to look at growth numbers a little bit further. And we've already recognized that the numbers from 2051, we would far exceed them far before 2051. So we know that there will be more need at some point. And as Harold said, there's redevelopment and everything else, but there might be a further need. But if we have the opportunity to look at all options, we can better plan for our community.
Thank you. So we've already exceeded our growth numbers up to 2051. So we've already far exceeded the expectations of the province, and we already have the land available within the urban boundary. So at present, this isn't essential. So another reason why I'm going to say no to this. My last question is, we speak about, taxes and how we're going to balance the taxes with commercial. So it's my understanding that these would probably be very dense residential properties that wouldn't actually be adding to our commercial base. Is that correct? So growth no longer pays for growth as well. So it would be the taxpayers who would be paying for this very dense greenbelt development, correct?
If the greenbelt development was to be taking place under the current, under the now flawed provincial process, which was very housing focused, for what the administration identified as a housing crisis, and they suggested that the greenbelt lands were going to serve. Of course, that was questionable, but nevertheless, in a proper planning process where we would be looking comprehensively at the land needs, the land use needs, and the land availability, as we move towards this notion of a complete community, complete community at the neighborhood level, but also at the town-wide level, would suggest that we do need to provide other uses more aggressively. And so, so that we can continue to better balance that tax base. It means that we have to get more creative in our policy, and we have to be more, do a better job at holding the line with respect to meeting other land use requirements before, for example, additional housing gets added as a strategy, or encouraging more mixed uses and other things like that. There might be an opportunity. Again, it's all speculation until the process is undertaken, but I wouldn't suggest that, going back to the earlier question about the leverage that is offered with which is, land that currently would be pennies in price, but has tremendous growth potential and potential profitability. That scenario is a very strong and seductive leverage that the province and the municipality would have to get far better and development quality and far better mix of uses and far more affordable housing. Those things should be absolutely essential as part of the consideration of these lands. But it's the province that will determine this.
All right, but before we move to the second round, Councillor Korsanji, did you want to speak? All right, and I just wanted to I have a couple comments. Certainly all the greenbelt lands are not created equal, and I think the process right from the start was flawed, and they didn't do a good job of actually determining what was viable farmland, what was the best farmland. And in a lot of cases, there's farmland that we lost throughout the province that was the prime farmland, and it was left out inexplicably from the Greenbelt. But there are two properties in Grimsby that aren't the same as anywhere else. They are environmentally significant as far as I'm concerned, and that's the Irish Grove Woodlot, which is the last remnant below the escarpment of Carolinian Forest in Niagara, the largest remnant, and the bigger lagoon, which was a former sewage lagoon that was going to be decommissioned and filled by the region. Ducks Unlimited, as well as Wayne Furtick, who was alderman at the time, got together and naturalized that wetland site. And that site is unique in its own and is completely different than a lot of the Greenbelt lands. And in my opinion, an environmental significance is every bit as important as agriculture, every bit as important as land for building on. And these two, I think, should be in everything that the town of Grimsby puts forward, that these two pieces should be noted all the time and constantly being fought for. And as well as the escarpment and all that, those type of areas. But these two pieces really are there and need to be identified as environmentally significant. So we'll go with Councillor Bradsey for the second time.
Can I just to that? You'll note that there was a point where we suggested that there would be a study of agricultural and environmental considerations on these lands, because we actually also would agree with you, Mayor, that there is as part of any transition, reconsideration of these lands, that there needs to be a carving out of those lands, again, at another higher level of care, that would still respect the fact that these are Greenbelt lands for the most part, and that they're part of the transition between maybe urban and Greenbelt, and that maybe they need to be not considered as just another vacant lands for development, but they need to be considered as something somewhere in between, and that part of the Greenbelt still remains remnant there, where we can and where it makes sense to keep it as part of the kind of heritage of that site, so to speak. So we recognize that as well as an important factor.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Let's move to Councillor Bradsey.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I think it's nice to see the federal, provincial, and municipal level of governments all recognizing the need for housing today. We truly need all three levels of this government working together. And I feel like I speak for the young generation. I say when we want to own a home and not a condo, which we might have meeting our growth targets for 2050, Councillor Schwab, but everything we have in our pipeline is all condos. Should the province hear us tonight, this would actually give us the leverage and the opportunity to request something different. I know many growing families would like backyards for their children, garages, driveways, and without an urban boundary expansion, the truth is we don't have the opportunity to supply this for any residents further. Urban boundary expansion takes the pressure off infill of our downtown. I also think it's crucial we maintain our town's historic message to the province of wanting review changes, especially in the west end of town. I also recognize that this is a sensitive issue, but I feel like, as Councillor DeFlavio noted, if we don't look at this from the province's perspective, and we look at this truly from a Grimsby perspective, all the controversy, in my view, seems to dissipate. The reality is that these lands have geotechnical reports to say the soil is not suitable for farmland. It's not like we're talking about orchards or vineyards. This is the densest part of our town, and I think we need to include in our official plan the future possibility of removals. And I think asking for this tonight is a bold step, and I applaud the leadership that this town may potentially take.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Couple questions. So right now, we don't own this land, do we? This is all privately owned. Basically, all we own is kind of the zoning, except the province owns the zoning, right? Because we can't designate Greenbelt. They have to designate Greenbelt. If we didn't use a part of this land, where would growth go in Grimsby? You've been here a while. Where are the areas that are open for growth? Because we know we know what's coming. We can't stop it. So where will it go?
And I'll probably start this off, but I'd invite Terry and or Walter to respond as well. Right now, based on my own experience and my own understanding of the town thus far, there is, in my opinion, vast areas to grow still. When I say vast areas, is that we're talking about different scales of development. We're talking about smaller footprints and areas of predominantly redevelopment along your commercial corridors. There are areas that as part of my emerging list of priorities for planning, one of them is going to be what I'm calling the placemaking initiatives, that it's not just for the sake of development. There's infill opportunities, significant infill opportunities in Grimsby, along the highway corridor, along some of your main streets, and dying or kind of antiquated commercial plazas and strips for mixed-use developments that would include higher densities, not necessarily at the scale that we're seeing at Grimsby by the Lake, but certainly in numbers, in the thousands of units that are significant, that can be accommodated in ways that would fit very nicely in the current and existing areas. But it's not going to be what you've typically seen up till now, which has been in, townhouse, row house, and subdivisions. It will be that type of typology, but it will also be moving into other typologies like apartment buildings and stacks. Which
I'm not sure if you're familiar with, like, Save Main Street. There's been a lot of resistance to that kind of growth down the main quick corridor, and trying to sort of preserve our sort of our history, and which we have quite a bit of. My last question is, do we have any means by which, if we were to allow some of this, can we say it has to be all net zero? Can we say that's the provision? We'll let you build a little bit on it, but it's got to be net zero. And so then it's actually contributing to the environment as opposed to a kind of net loss.
Again, I would in my opinion, absolutely, this needs to be part of the package of conditions for the transfer of these lands to development, that there needs to be another level of measure and expectation for these lands, and the leverage is there to request that. And there are developers out there that will meet that challenge. It's not all of them will, but there are some who know how to do this and do this profitably. So, yeah, exactly. So, anybody else want to respond? No?
Thank you, Harold.
Okay.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, we have the resolutions split. So
I've requested e-scribe as well for each.
all right, we need a mover and seconder for receiving report PA 2336. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Korsanji.
Just to receive, you should just ask.
Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Korsanji. Resolved that report PA 23-36 Greenbelt amendments and motions dated November 20th, 2023 be received. All in favor? That's carried.
Just to receive.
All right, I'll read the resolution. Number 2, resolve that council provide this report as comments to the province with respect to the proposed changes to the Greenbelt legislation and mapping. Need a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio.
Can we put that on the screen?
Second by Councillor Bradzi. All right. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Bradzi. Resolved that the council provide this report as comments to the province with respect to the proposed changes to the Greenbelt legislation and mapping. Please scribe vote. Councillor DeFlavio?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just assuming that we're voting on the 5, this includes the 5 points that were, do we want to put the 5 points up there so people know clearly what they're voting on? Or, okay.
Is this number 2?
Okay, I'm going to vote in favor of it, but I think that what Councillor Charlo was asking for was that it be clearly defined in there so as long as everybody knows what they're voting for here.
All right, e-scribe voting. All right, yeah, Councillor. Yeah, it's open for comments on every one of these.
Through you, Chair. Number 2, no, I'll say no to that because to me it means the same thing as number 4. If you can bounce ahead, we don't have it on there, but 2 and 4 pretty well, they refer to mapping and it's the same idea.
Are we allowed to debate this right now?
Yeah.
Well, because they're separated, I think procedurally it allows a whole debate on every resolution, doesn't it? Yeah.
So we voted on 1 and 2 so far.
Just 1.
We voted on number 1, receiving. We're on number 2 right now, and it's on the floor right now with a mover and
I thought we
seconder.
just voted on this one.
No.
I think I just put it in.
This one hasn't closed yet.
Oh, sorry.
So,
No.
Mayor, if I could, so this includes all 5 of the proposals by our planning staff. This is that all 5 of those be sent forward to the province on behalf of council. I think that if we're voting on an e-scribe, then it should be on there. So I don't know if Jessica wants to revise it. No, it's just because it's not clear, right? This is
Well, it is clear because we've separated out the five items, and we're voting on them each separately. So we're going to have a vote on each item. We voted to receive, which was number 1. This is number 2. So we're voting separately. It's just they've all been separated out. It's been requested to be separated out.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just I'm just wondering, I'm recommending maybe should we vote this last? Because if there are any points that may be approved and may be defeated, it would make more sense if this goes kind of last, right? So we know what's being put in as carried and what's defeated.
Yeah, I'm happy to move this to the end, if that works.
No, I think it's been voted on.
What?
Has it been voted on?
All right, so what we're going to do is put, I'll read it, put number 3 up now, and it's that council requests consideration by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to reimburse the town of Grimsby $82,000 to cover the administrative costs incurred as a result of previous direction given by the province. So we need a mover and seconder for that resolution. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe.
Mayor, just the 82,000 was an estimate, so is staff satisfied that that amount adequately represents the cost?
I just think, I think that our potential, given the province, that number's been out, and given the province is going with that number, I don't see how we, even if the estimate was low, I don't see how we can change it, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think staff is comfortable that we've come up with a fair number.
All right, so I can read the resolution again if everyone likes. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that Council requests consideration by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to reimburse the Town of Grimsby $82,000 to cover the administrative costs incurred as a result of the previous direction given by the province. E-scribe vote has been requested. All right, we saw it for a second. That was carried. Yeah. All right, so we're moving to the next section, which is resolved that council requests the province not include parcels identified in map 11 in the town of Grimsby in the Greenbelt through Bill 136. And that's number 4. So need a mover and seconder for that one? We skipped number 2.
On mine, 2 is the.
Yeah, you've got to look at the numbers on here because number 1 doesn't have a number, so they have to move down. Like,
They have one.
oh, okay, so I've got my script, but I think they even out, right?
Yeah, they do.
All right,
They're all the same.
all right,
Can you put it up, Jess?
This is for number 4
yes.
of 5.
There's actually 6 now.
There's 6.
Yeah,
wanna
we'll
discuss
get a
it
mover
first?
and seconder to get it on the floor.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Councillor Korstanji and Councillor Vardy.
You don't yet, because it hasn't been put on the floor.
But on the original one, this is number 4.
In the report, it's number 4.
That's the
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
I don't want to get.
Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you. Thank you, through you, Chair. I don't know how everybody else thinks, but I would prefer if this said something like, the council requests the province do an early review of the Greenbelt lands situated in Grimsby. If we're going to do a review 2024, 2025 anyway, all we're going to do is ask for it to be done earlier. And if it's done through a better process, then we get public consultation and we get Indigenous review and stuff like that. So I don't know how everybody else feels about just changing up the wording a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, that seems like a valid, friendly amendment, if the rest of the council's okay with it. Mover and seconder are okay with it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, excuse the confusion, but the motion on the floor will remain the same. Councillor Korstanji and Councillor Vardy have just changed the one following to meet their requests. So just give us one moment and we'll put it back up.
Bonnie, can we also add to this one, at the direction of the town of Grimsby? Yes.
Just use your mic, Councillor Bradzi, so you can clarify.
Just to clarify Councillor DeFlavio's question, it was to add the direction of the town in Grimsby to ensure that it's at our well. And then also we could walk away at any time.
So this was in the report number 4, and then with the amendments now, correct?
So we're going to leave it unamended as is?
Okay.
All right.
Take it out.
Okay, sorry, I got to close the vote again.
Wait, don't close it.
No, wait, they're changing it.
Changing it again.
No, so we're taking out what was.
All right, moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that council request the province not include the parcels identified in map 11 in the town of Grimsby in the green belt through Bill 136. And e-scribe voting. Councillor Howe.
I will be saying no to this. We're going to go back to, and Councillor Korstanji, I understand exactly your thoughts. It's so toxic over there right now. No one's going to be looking at anything. until such time as maybe there's a change in government. If, then they're probably going to be a little bit gun shy. I don't think anybody over there will do anything at this point in time. So we do have that review coming up, that review period. And then absolutely, and, you know, if we want to request that then through a process, but I'm going to say no to it because I think it's just kind of spitting in the wind. Okay.
Can we get clarification on the voting process? Because as soon as the vote is in progress, why are we discussing it, debating it after? Or if you can just, like, if we talk about it first and then pull up the vote rather than voting.
We need a
and
mover and
discussing.
seconder to get it on the floor for discussion, and then you vote with your e-scribe.
Sorry, through you,
If
Mr.
a
Mayor.
counselor wants to vote in advance on e-scribe, that's totally up to them.
Yeah, and we're also projecting so you can see the wording. So maybe ignore the vote in progress, maybe to clarify. It's just to show the wording, the motion that we're voting.
Counselor Bradzi.
Councillor Howe, I just wanted to say I think it's important that we maintain the town's corporate position of wanting these out if we plan to look at this at a future date. I think if we don't keep that message now, it detracts from that case down the road. So I think it's likely that that's the way it goes, but I think we need to maintain our message. That's just my thoughts.
All right, so are we voting now then?
Yeah, I'd say vote.
All right. The vote is really in progress now. All right, so that is carried. Now we're moving to number 5. Need a mover and seconder. Yeah, so this doesn't have any changes.
We have a change. It's going to be up on the screen.
Okay.
Change.
All right, moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Vardy.
Can you put it on the screen?
I'll read it off the screen. All right, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that Council requests the province develop a municipal process for the town's consideration with criteria, for example, exchange of lands, environmental or agricultural impact studies, for reconsideration of lands evidence to be appropriate for future developments, and that would result in no adverse impacts to the Greenbelt. Discussion? Councillor Howe?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. This one kind of really jumped out at me, and then I related it to the escarpment crossing. My biggest, I read it, and all I could think about is something as important as the escarpment crossing. If we get to it, and they tie us up for 2 years and 3 years as we try to get it through a whole process, that's why I think it's important that they start it now and have something in place. Even if it's not used, at least you know that there's some rules. But, you know, that the escarpment crossing, I don't want it held up because of not being ready for it.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So my concern about this one is, well, a couple of things. There's already a process in place. There's supposed to be a review every 10 years at the provincial level. So I would say that if you did that right, if you actually did the review and listened to municipalities when they bring forth input and have a legitimate review process, that you don't need a process, because I'm concerned that I don't want control over the Greenbelt. Like, I think that the Greenbelt, one of the reasons why it works is because it's regulated and put in place. So I have concerns about this one. I think that there's a process in place. I don't know if our staff wants to talk about it, but, there is a review every 10 years. It's coming up again in 2025, I believe. And I just don't know that having control over this at the municipal level is a good idea. Because do you want, I guess a process in place that allows for exchange? We've already you already mentioned all the land that was exchanged in the past. Nothing was exchanged there. It was just a bunch of land that was added to the Greenbelt. So we don't really have anything left to exchange anyway. So I don't know what we would exchange.
Terry, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think what the change to this one was really about was that they develop a municipal process that actually works for municipalities. One of the things that the province has done lately is make processes that don't work for municipalities, and that's part of the real problem. So I think it's not that municipalities would have ultimate control, just have some input into the municipal process that is derived for municipalities. And one of the changes that they're making through that bill is that any change to the Greenbelt boundaries would have to be done through the legislature. So there is no opportunity for municipalities to do that without it going to the provincial legislature. So it's much more difficult, and it probably would never happen.
All right, so Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I just wanted to ask a question for staff. So the MCR, or Municipal Comprehensive Review, how can that play into this?
Through the current consideration, there would have to be some, and this is where we need a process to really look at it, because there's a whole bunch of provincial legislation that is potentially coming down that we have to consider, whether the region is still in the planning game or not, how the provincial planning statement will look, and how that policy for municipal boundaries would be. If the growth plan is still in place, we would have to talk to the region about another MCR, so Municipal Comprehensive Review, which is required when they have to look at their entire regional official plan. So it might have to wait a while. If everything stays as it is, it might have to wait a while for them to review it again, because it's a lengthy process, and that would involve a change in their plan as well. So we're just trying to open a window to be able to consider.
Councillor Vardy.
I just wanted to say I thought it was important to put in there a municipal process for the town's consideration, meaning nothing can be imposed on us. We can consider it. We don't like it. If it doesn't suit us, we just say no.
I just wanted to add one more thing, sorry, Chair, if I could. Sorry. It's my understanding that Minister Calandra is establishing a new process, one that would have to go to scientific and technical boards and depoliticizes the issue. I think it's a good thing if we kind of say, hey, look, we have issues with the Greenbelt dating back to its inception. Use us as the case study for this. We already have geotechnical reports and a lot of scientific data to support this decision. Why would we not be the case study and the model for whatever process the minister is thinking?
Councillor Howe.
Councilor Brazzi, I wish that I could think like that, but that particular minister and along with some others are going to be walking around with nothing but 2x4s across their backside for a long, long time. They're not going to mention the word greenbelt at all. So it's a nice thought, and he said nice things, but he'll have the 2x4.
All right, I think we're ready to vote. And that's carried. Oh, yeah. Thank you. All right. Now we have an added resolution added by Councilor DeFlavio, number 6. Councilor DeFlavio, would you like to read it?
Thank you, Mayor. Further to what I spoke about before about affordable housing, I asked that we add, additionally, the council proposed that the province develops a comprehensive process stipulating that 10% of any land removed from the Greenbelt for development purposes must be allocated to the creation of rental or affordable housing. I think that it's important that we address the issue of, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to speak on it yet. I'll wait.
This is new. Yeah. We just need a seconder, so. Councilor Bradzi, a seconder. You can start the discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I already spoke about this before. I think that all of the discussions about housing, in all of the discussions that have occurred, there's been very little actual done to address the affordability crisis. It's not availability, I think, that is the issue. If you look on realtor.ca, there are lots of houses for sale. It's the cost of housing that is an issue. And we've recently dealt with discussed the idea of rental housing. So I'm fine with rental or affordable as defined by the regional guidelines. But I think that if we set a guideline of 10%, which is what we were told was going to be the guideline, I'm not pulling that out of thin air. We were told that that was what they were going to use. It looks like Ms. Kim wants to talk to that, so I'll be quiet for a change.
See you.
See you, Mr. Mayor. So the province already requires that we designate 10% to affordable housing, so maybe we bump that number up. So we want to do above and beyond what the province requires, right?
So just through you, Mayor, we've had discussions about this, and not without going into the details of what we've discussed, because there were legal matters. There's been very little discussion of affordability in this process. So I just want to make sure that affordability is something that is in the forefront of the discussion. Yeah.
And just if I can, before Councilor Vardy, affordability as defined by the provincial government, in my opinion, is very flawed, because in Grimsby, our assessment is one of the highest in Niagara, and an affordable house is considered 20 or 80% of what the mean is, and unfortunately in Grimsby, that puts an affordable house at around $600,000, which may or may not be affordable, and that might be a low number. Councillor Vardy.
I take your point of what you want to do, Councillor DeFlavio, although it feels like we're already starting to negotiate with the province, and this is not where we're at with this. We're just saying, give us a process for consideration. And then we can tell you the number, the 50 things that we want for us to consider this. So I just think that your motion is a bit premature. And I think that in the context of the official plan, the new official plan, which we're working on now, that would be a more appropriate opportunity to put that in. Or when if we do get a response from the province, then it's our opportunity to say all the things that we would want for us to consider any of this.
Councillor Howe.
If I may, Chair, through you, Director Harold, have we got the wherewithal to have discussions as you go? And you were saying about, you're in a position to ask for something. And I certainly respect Councilor DeFabio sorry about that, about talking about affordability. I've got 4 boys. I'm pretty fortunate, but it's going to be a little bit different than when I bought my first house for them. And it's different, but if we leave it open, at least there's a baseline, but we're not going to let that baseline define who we are.
I would agree with the suggestion that it might be a little premature for us to be setting out the standards and the numbers at this point. I think that compelling the province to create a process for consideration of these lands would be a big step forward. And then a set of conditions for doing so would be the next step. And as suggested, I think there are many ways in which affordability is measured. And for us to define 10% would also mean that we have some implied or assumptions based on what affordability is. And I don't know that we, thinking about a new world order, we'll call it, with respect to development moving forward and on these green lands, if we're going to move in that direction and we want to set the bar high, that we need to rethink affordability. I think we need to rethink a lot of things. This is the opportunity for us to do so. If this is about affordability, that's really affordable, and I think meeting the full range of needs, that isn't just about a measured price based on a community's assessment, but rather on real people's means and income, and that there's a whole range of different needs that a community, if truly inclusive, is going to consider. And I think that this needs more study and more thought and more thinking. And I think that as part of the condition, I think it's perfectly appropriate for us to mention the things that as a minimum, the conditions for development ought to consider affordability, housing affordability in a meaningful way that is truly inclusive, the environment in such a way that it's not just minimal standards, but standards that do achieve net zero carbon emissions, which is being done elsewhere in the world. It's not a radical requirement or expectation. That kind of set of conditions, setting that bar high, is perfectly appropriate as a set of principles. What that number is and what, I don't know that we're there yet. I don't think we're, as a staff, prepared to give you guidance, because I don't think we were ready to tell you what affordability is for this community as it ought to be. After this official plan process, we'll know better, because we were setting out and studying that.
Councillor Howe.
Harold, you kind of touched on it, excuse me, Mayor, through you, Harold, and you mentioned it, the official plan. That's, at the end of the day, that's where we really need to have all this information and predominant in where it's going to be? Because isn't an official plan reviewed by the province upon receipt? And that's one of the places that, from what I can understand through yourself, you know a lot better than I, but that official plans have a lot of impressionable features to them, to those people that are reviewing it. So that will be all addressed in the official plan, correct?
So the official plan, as part of the process, there will be, and we've just begun to define what we'll call, I guess, I'll call them baskets or columns of a themed study that's going to look at look in more detail at, tailored to the needs of this town, very specific aspects of demographics, land use mix, transit and active transportation, for example. There's a whole series of things that we've identified as a series of what are we calling them again? The interest policy drivers or directives, policy directives. So they'll be studied and they will result in outcomes that, looking at data, and it's all evidence-based, we'll be setting out a series of policy directives that start as a very large collection of possibilities that will hone in and narrow down. And a lot of them will intersect, and a lot of this, I would expect that you, as the process unfolds, that council will be fed into this process and provide opportunities to engage and to see as the process unfolds. But the timing of this and the official plan, serendipitous, whatever you want to call it, it does line up quite nicely. If you suggest that you attach this consideration to the larger Greenbelt review that's going to be undertaken, I think by that time we'll have some clearer direction as to what the town needs as well. Does that sound right? Yeah. And so I think that I think it makes sense to align with the broader review and to think about to enable us to get a little bit more comfortable with the state of Grimsby in terms of where it is that we are today and where we need to go. And I think that in the coming year we'll have a much clearer idea, that it's going to become much more crystal clear relative to where we are now. We can make educated guesses, but again, when it comes to affordability, environment, and other things that which are rapidly changing, this is about, I would suggest this is a time for us to think differently about a lot of things. And you're right, the province will be seeing this document as part of the review. We do have to conform to other top-down policies, but they're broad enough in their scope that there allows for some creative interpretation. And so, but I think Grimsby's in a good position to be thinking in an innovative and creative way. And these Greenbelt lands might provide an opportunity for us to do that. If you're thinking about agriculture different, it doesn't mean that we have to do away with agriculture here. It might be that agriculture is thought of differently and it's integrated maybe in an urban way. It would be very interesting for us if through the official plan process to explore a completely different range of land uses that might be appropriate here, looking at best practices and precedents that's working elsewhere. And beyond just, Niagara, it could be as far as Europe and other places that might make sense for precedents.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So just to clarify, are you suggesting that this land not be developed until after the official plan review? Because the reason why I wanted it included, the affordability included in this motion, is because this is separate from that. This is something we're asking this land be developed as soon as possible. That's part of the process, and therefore won't be part of the official plan process where affordability, I agree, on the townwide level, affordability is something we need to look at. But for this particular land, the reason why I want to include this is because I think that we have a rare opportunity to say this land is land that wouldn't be developable otherwise. We have been told already that affordability was one of the things that they wanted to deal with. So the reason why I want it included in this resolution is because I want to make sure that it's important to us, and when I say us, I mean you as well as a staff, to, when you are going through the negotiation process with the developers, push for either rental or affordable housing. And affordable housing can be defined later. It could be 30% of median income. It could be, there's lots of different ways to define 30%. No more than 30% is generally the worldwide kind of standard should be spent on housing, for example, of gross income. That's what people, that's one of those definitions. So if people are spending more than 30% of their gross income on housing, then it's not considered affordable. But that it could be a lot of other things. It could be, zoning for to promote that kind of thing. But I just want to make sure that we're including something that says that we don't want just detached or semi-detached homes here that don't solve the problem. We understand that there is a problem in affordability, and we think that it needs to be addressed in any future provincial policy. Because that was my criticism from the get-go of the changes to the Greenbelt, was that they didn't actually address any of the issues that we know exist on the provincial level. We know that affordability is the major issue, not the availability of housing, because there is no evidence to support that there is not adequate housing available on the provincial level. There's thousands and thousands of acres of land that are zoned that have not been developed yet. We know that. There's lots of, if we remove this land from the Greenbelt, I think it's important that we say a portion of this land has to be affordable. And we recognize that. And that's what the point of what I was saying was. So I agree with you about the official plan and future developments, but for these specific developments, I want to make sure that we go on the record saying that we think that some of this should be affordable housing. That's all.
I think that's worth responding to. I think that I would suggest that where we are today with the province and with respect to these lands, that I don't think that any of the process leading to where we are now is going to be credible or found to be credible. I think that that I can only imagine that the province would entertain the idea of these lands under a completely different planning scenario, under the one that we're trying to identify. What is the process? If the province has admittedly and very publicly stated that this was flawed, and that it wasn't transparent, and it didn't follow the process that it ought to have followed, then I don't know that we could imagine that this is going to happen very quickly, and that they're just going to simply accept these lands as proceeding. Now, rightly or wrongly, it's just that it's been tainted by a larger matter and issue, and I think for it to be, there needs to be a clear-cut reconsideration, and I don't think it's going to happen very quickly. And and all of the studies demonstrate and show, Councillor, that there are, overall in the GTA, Grimsby not alone, but overall in the GTH and the Golden Horseshoe, there are adequate lands without having to eat into the Greenbelt to meet the current needs. And you're correct. There are thousands and thousands of approved units that are not being developed right now, that are approved and as of right, ready to go right now. So there are other issues at play here with respect to meeting the housing crisis. The specific issues to Grimsby aside. So I don't think that these lands are going to happen quickly. I don't know if anybody would agree. Just imagine the development of these lands proceeding very quickly with council, with the provincial approval. You have 2,000 approved? 1,000 units currently approved in Grimsby, not built yet, that have not been built. Green belt aside, right? So, condos, I guess, mostly condos? Yeah. So, more affordable probably than housing, street-related housing. I'm sorry to, I'm not sure if that answered the question, but again, I think that the process is going to be not quick. Yeah.
Just as a reminder, there's a lot of criticism about what the province did in opening up some greenbelt lands because there are many approved units within existing urban areas, that those greenbelt plan lands are usurping lands that have been already approved, and those lands aren't being developed because there was a pressure to build on the greenbelt lands. So that was one of the criticisms of doing it the way they did it.
All right, seeing no further questions, I guess we're voting e-scribe on this. All right, that's defeated. Perfect. All right, so now we're moving back to number 2. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolved that council provide this report as comments to the province with respect to the proposed changes in the Greenbelt legislation and mapping. Councillor Bradsey. All right, so we're voting in progress now. All right, that is carried. And we're going to just take a 5-minute break now. We'll reconvene at 9. All right, welcome back to the meeting, everyone. Up next, we have notice of motion. Councillor Korsanji has a notice of motion ready. You're going to read it?
Thank you. Whereas implementing a short-term rental tax or licensing system within our municipality can aim to enhance both the regulatory framework for short-term rentals and the promotion of tourism. Whereas such a system could ensure compliance with local regulations and contribute to a municipality's revenue stream. Whereas revenue generated from this initiative can be reallocated towards establishing a pilot project fund designated for legal representation for local tenants. This fund would be dedicated to providing legal representation and support services to local tenants facing housing-related legal challenges. The provision of legal aid for tenants will contribute to a more equitable and fair housing environment within our community. Therefore, be it resolved that staff conduct a comprehensive study on the potential implementation of a short-term rental tax or licensing system and the establishment of the pilot project fund. The study should encompass an analysis of similar initiatives in other municipalities, potential revenue projections, administrative requirements, and the feasibility of allocating a portion of the revenue for tenant legal representation. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the December 4th, 2023 council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Korsanji. Up next, we have correspondence, first from the Niagara Transit Commission, Niagara Region Transit, on-demand service statistics. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Korsanji. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Korsanji. Resolved that the correspondence from the Niagara Transit Commission be received. All in favor? That's carried. Now we move to bylaws, 2065, 2392, and 2393. Can I get a mover and seconder for the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradzi. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradzi. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 20-65 and bylaws 2392 and to 2393 inclusive, and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Next meeting for council is scheduled December 4th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. And just a reminder that the parade is December 2nd at 5:15 p.m. And on December 1st, there is a Moonlight Madness hosted by the DIA, and there's going to be a Christmas market downtown on Main Street, and that runs from 5 to 9 on December 1st. No closed sessions tonight. Now can I get a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-94 and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone. Have a good evening.